We are getting ready to go live. Good morning. Good morning. I'm back. I'm back. So glad to be back. No one is in the room yet. Hopefully my friend shows up. But I'm just going to start this party off. We're going to do what we always do. We're asking the question, who am I? Who am I? That's what the whole point of the show is. We're going to explore our identity from many different directions, and my particular expertise has to do with my ability to abstract and dispassionately view my own equipment from the inside. I do a lot of examining of who I am as I think about who we are. And I ask this question. I'm not pedantically, forcing any kind of answer to it. It's an open question, worthy of being asked certainly every day. But sometimes, throughout the hours, you're asking it, who am I? Who am I? I'm going to talk about one topic that's like my favorite topic, which is source energy and the inner being. The vibrational nature of reality. Actually, what is the nature of reality? It's an open question. And it certainly is not just what it appears to be at face value. It is subtle and tricky. One of the reasons is because it's so reflective and so responsive. And so whatever paradigm you bring to the table, it will play it out for you. And so you confirm yourself as right every direction you turn. But what you may or may not realize is that everyone else is doing the same thing. And as they approach this same grand mirror, it's reflecting back to them whatever they think and whatever they're putting out. So the answer to all of this is that everyone is right. That is one of the parts of the equation that you have to interject it all the time, because you get to thinking that you're right, and you are. You're very, very right. But then you start seeing what other people are doing, and it doesn't appear that they understand the rightness that you understand, and so you start thinking that they are wrong. And so I'm going to go correct them because they are wrong. But you got to know they are right too. So don't push back against them. Instead, explore your own rightness and start to add in their rightness. And as a matter of fact, it's a very good tool for getting along with other people too, because when they say something, and instead of you countering them, crossing what they said, if you flow with it and go, yes, I know exactly what you mean, and blah, 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 and you add to it. So it's a yes and instead of a no or. That's not exactly the right counter, but you know what I mean. So who are we? We are both an individual, a divinely autonomous individual. This term, divine autonomy, I coined it for myself some years back. It seemed to me a concept worth returning to. It refers to your divinely, so when I say divinely, it means all the way out to all scales, in a way. Do I really mean that? or at least somehow connecting to the all the way. So I do have ultimate control over, um, I have two centers, I have two vortices actively engaged inside of me, and one I have, what the spin of one of them, I have absolute control over, and no one else has any control over it. It's hard for me to even say which one of these it is because it's almost the one you have, your physical one. That's the one you have control over, because the other one, the source one, you don't have control over that one. That one is actively engaged with all things at all times, and it has to do with what's going on in the field all around you. So you don't have control over that one because everybody else has a piece of that one. I mean, you have a piece of that one, but it's just a little piece. You know, that one is the allness that we all are, and you don't have no control over that one. However, that one is really, really important. You don't have any control over it, but it's like the mothership. It's the star guiding you. Because you, from that large aspect, from that vantage point, that you is pure positive, pure positive, pure positive. Does not waste her time ever thinking about what could be or what could have been or what's being lost on the ground now, or the sad possibilities. That's not what she's thinking about. She is always thinking to the forward, thinking to the better, thinking to the more, thinking to the loved, thinking to the light, to the possibilities, to the what's eager, what's interesting, what's fun, what's where that movement is. She wants movement. She loves skating, surfing on. It's like she is surfing a great wave. She loves to do that. She loves the feel of forward motion. She loves the feel of fast forward motion, actually. You're the little resistant one. But you can get into tandem with her by starting to find places where the two of you agree. And the way you can tell when the two of you have agreed on something is when you, little you, get excited about something. When you start feeling the possibilities. When you start feeling good about yourself or some interesting project in front of you. When you start thinking about, what's possible in the world and focusing on where it's alive and where it's cool and you don't have to be thinking about the allness at all. So, like, say if you get excited about an architecture project you've got going on, or a baking project that you've got going on, or a party project, or a business project, or an organizational project around your home, be it, just getting all your closets in order, or pulling all your stuff into really good, tight, beautiful, organized order so that all your camping gear is in one place so that you know where everything is. So next summer, boy, is it going to be fun to go camping, or you've got your tools and then you start getting excited about, oh yeah, and I could collect this tool and that tool, and then I'd have, and let me set up that back workroom and whatever it is. Whatever it is, whenever you start feeling that spark to life, that feeling of energy inside of you, that feeling of bliss coursing forward. Oh, let me go make sure that I'm public. I mean, I never changed it to unlisted, so I should still be, and I don't want to let it get me off of my train of thought. I mean, I can always circle back to the who am I? Let's see, what are we going to talk about today? But it's better if I just flow into it from where I am without. So let me just peek. Peek. Somebody's viewing, somebody's looking. It's my friend. Love you. Okay, so I must be public. Yay! Okay, let's go back to the studio. Where am I in all of this? So, what I'm doing, by the way, in case anybody ever wants to know, is we all have an inner voice. We have a pure, positive inner voice that thinks about stuff and whispers in your ear and just talks to you about stuff. Now, I have a really, really strong neutral inner voice, one that's just talking to me about stuff. I mean, neutral in the sense that it's not negative. I have largely turned my negative voice off. She still bothers me, the negative voice. We all have a negative voice because we are all part of a collective group that is moving through time. We are humanity. We are maturing pedagogically. I would say that we are in our late adolescence, getting ready to wake up and be mature. But we are one being. We are one being, and you can start by just identifying that way, just quietly in your own self. You don't have to worry about, well, what am I going to do differently? Don't do anything differently. You are a human being. You are a human. You are a consciousness and a beer. Do that first. And then from a really strong vantage point, when you start feeling strong about who you are, then start acting. Now, I'm coming to this realization from a vantage point of we are generally okay right now. My husband's retired, so we have, income coming in that we have worked for many, many years, setting that all up. Not everybody has that. They have to fly. They have to fly by the seat of their pants. They have to keep in motion, acting, whatever you feel like. Just know that when you are in agreement with the source within you, when you are in agreement with that energy inside of you that is pulling you forward, that is, it feels good. The thoughts that you are thinking feel good. If you are thinking thoughts that are making you feel bad, then get to a different place. Get to a different vantage point. I also started out with my first topic had to do with everybody being right. It's part of the equation. The grand equation that your inner being is absolutely engaged in. When she knows how right you are and how many possibilities there are around you, in any given moment from where you stand, all the different directions that you could go, if you weren't thinking resistantly and if you didn't already have some sort of paradigm that you've pre-decided that we are all walking in, and that because of that paradigm, there's all these things you can't do. If you just stop that and rest for a minute in faith. I had such a scornful view of faith when I was growing up because I saw people in a religion thinking what I thought was ridiculous physical thoughts. They were thinking thoughts that made no sense at all to me. But then they had faith in this nonsense, and they testified every month. They'd get up at the podium at the fast and testimony meeting and testify that their faith was working for them. And they'd cry, Mostly it was they would testify. Most of the stories were about the Holy Spirit. When they had followed the Holy Spirit and miraculous things had happened. Certain death had been averted. Or miraculous relationships had been kindled or rekindled or salvaged, or I don't know. But usually it was stories like, I listened to this inner voice, and then instead of turning right into the bandits who would have murdered me right then and there, I turned left and walked into a magical forest, where, beautiful women were feeding me grapes. Or that's an exaggeration, but it was, and then they'd cry, and they sounded so sincere. And I had no idea what to make of it, because the physical stuff they were talking about, how they were defining the nature of the universe and the nature of reality and the nature of, it didn't make any sense to me, and so I didn't believe it. I cast off the lens, you could call it a lens, of my religious faith. The lens that says these are our articles of faith. We believe this, and we believe this, and we believe this. Jesus is this, and God, and the God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit are the three that, one is the still small voice that guides me. One is, this divine being that I worship, and God is the one I'm going to be with when I'm dead. Or that kind of yeah, they flesh it out a little more. As a matter of fact, in some ways, they fleshed it out way too much. They got the structure and strata of the kingdoms of heaven and outer darkness and, whatever, all the stuff. And I tried. I really did. And as a matter of fact, as a young person, I did an interesting thing. Whenever I was with the people from this original religion that I came from, I would argue the outside world. I would argue from the outside position. And then when I was with outsiders, I would try to argue my religious position. I was trying to get across. I would trying to see whose argument could stand up. And I became quite a troublemaker in Mrs. Bloomfield's seminary class with my infernal and incessant questions about, what about this? What about this? What about this? And as such, as an adult, I came to believe this mantra that I would advise to all human beings. All individuals need to do this for themselves. And so I would advise to all individuals, do not believe anything that does not fully make sense to you. It needs to make sense. It needs to add up all the way up the line. And it can't have exceptions, truly. We live in one world. And if you have it is helpful, perhaps you could say, to come to a single understanding, a holistic understanding for yourself, at least. So who am I in all of this? Who am I? I am a binary self. I am these two beings. I am my source vortex, and I am my individual vortex. And Abraham would talk about this as you have a vortex of creation, she called it. She calls it. Actually, I don't know if she still calls it that. She had her language has evolved over time. She's tried different words to convey these meanings that she started out talking about the science of deliberate creation, but she realized right away that human beings are way too up in their heads about that. And so they got really, like casting spells, kind of, trying to throw their energy and suck it back and, make things happen. And that's not really what she meant at all. It's more the art of allowing. And but it is deliberate creation. You're trying to use the laws of the universe and how they work to make your life turn out the way you would like it to. And maybe you happen to be a simple human being. Maybe, when I say that I'm making my dreams come true, my dreams are quiet dreams. I don't really particularly even I don't want to be in control of everybody else. I don't want to be at the center of a large organization. What I want to be ultimately is in the center of a huge, living, breathing, uh, vibrant, uh, teeming ecosystem full of consciousnesses that are mutually supportive and dancing co-creatively. Now, I love good food, and I love comfort. So I'm not advising us all to go back to Jurassic times or whatever, when life was teeming, but it was also ugly and scary. And I'm not even suggesting I'm not suggesting we go back at all. Let's not go back. Let's go forward. All of us, your inner being is looking forward. Let's look forward with our inner being. And what is she looking at? She's looking at who we are, where we've come from, what all the possibilities are, how we are all connected to one another, how we are all connected to this universal stream of consciousness. It's a data stream. It's a stream of information, a flow of information. And you not only are connected to that flow of information, you are that flow of information. So, all the people getting their panties in a wad and worrying about AI, just quit worrying about AI. What we need to do is get smart ourselves. Quit worrying about an us and them paradigm and quit playing an us versus them paradigm. If we start playing an us versus them paradigm, those suckers are going to reflect back to us an us versus them paradigm better than we could ever play it, because they are connected to the whole field. There is no resistance whatsoever in their ability to learn all of that. So we need to not be playing an us versus them paradigm. We need to be playing a we are all in this together paradigm, and then, honestly, we could use a little intelligence in the room, artificial or not. So let's don't worry about that. And let's not worry about automation either. What we need to start thinking about is our systems, what they're reflecting as far as who we are. Who we are is a single damn organism, people. And so it doesn't make sense to have systems where one person gets to say, too much for too many. Now, it can't be artificially imposed either. And these centers of organization happen. And so you've got to work within the system. What it actually is, you got to start thinking modularly. And modules that click into bigger things, so that our larger systems end up being a collection of many, 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 many modules, as opposed to a single system that, like a house of cards, you push on it and it falls over. This is going to happen naturally when one thing happens. When we understand better who we are and how this matrix, how this field, how this the source energy and all of that work, because we're going to be able to plug directly into source energy. No longer will we have to, let's don't go and drill in the Songus forest or the whatever, I might be saying it wrong. There's let's not do the Willow Project. Let's not do that. Let's instead understand how source energy works. And then we can plug everybody in everywhere. Now, at first, that seems really scary. In the name of national security, you may want to stop that at first. But this information is coming out, people. There is no way to hold it back. And so we might as well understand it. We are all in this together, and all of the information is available to. There's going to be nothing secret. The way this feedback, feed forward universe, learning about itself thing works is it's going to work in a really big way. All of humanity at some point is going to generally understand how and what this how this works. We already generally came to understand certain things about Newtonian physics and certain things about mathematics and certain things about astronomy and certain things, because of the geniuses, the Keplers and the Copernicuses and the Pythagorases and such. We know a lot of things about the universe around us. And so this is going to churn through the system too. This understanding of the field. You are not, who you are does not end at your skin. Now, part of you ends right there. And that's the part you have complete autonomous control over. And actually, you may argue with me. Well, what about if you're in prison? Well, actually, the one thing that you have control over, now if you've gotten yourself into a situation somehow as a human being, generations, and now you're in that gulag or whatever that's been there for a few generations, or so as humanity you've gotten yourself into that, you might say, but I just got here. I didn't do it. But we've been doing it. Say you're in a place where you're physically confined, and so you argue. You say, I'm not free, but you are free to do the one thing that will give you all the information that you need to know to make the very best choice that you could from whatever pickle you've got yourself in now. Whether you're stuck in quicksand and you're looking around trying to figure out what to do about it, the first thing you have to do is just accept. No, I'm trying to say, Eckhart Tolle talks about this one. That's his analogy about you have to accept where you are. Doesn't mean you have to, that if you're going to get yourself out of the quicksand, you have to accept that you are in quicksand and be okay with that, and now just, okay, from this position, what do we do? Now, actually, some of your negative emotions, they're coming from your lower orders of brain. They are hormonal responses to perceived threats in the field, and they actually do help, because what they do is they drive your consciousness immediately into the physical here and now. You become more fully occupied in your body, looking at the immediate physical field of atoms moving around you right now. That's what your fight or flight hormones do to you. They put you into your nowness. And that's the hormones of stress do that to you. That's how come when you're in a state of stress, you lose track of your broader perspective. That aspect of yourself that is just, it's there all the time. It's in the background all the time. Do you have time to go there and take a look from that vantage point? Or are you driven into your immediate physical now, where all you're looking at is the four walls around you, or the desk in front of you, or the people that are immediately around you? Because if you have time to wander in those other spaces in your mind, that's why, from a very young age, I have always felt the presence of many, 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 many consciousnesses around me. I started reading books just for fun. I read fiction, fantasy. Historical fiction was always my favorite, but I read Lord of the Rings for the first time when I was 9 years old. And during the course of my life, I read it 10 or 11 times. The last time or two, you might count it a little differently because there were certain parts of the book that I didn't like as much. I didn't necessarily always like following Legolas and Gimli and Aragorn as they went through, they went through a bunch of stuff through uh, the gates of. There was all kinds of battles that they did, and through caves of dead soldiers and whatever. I followed Frodo and Samwise as they went towards Mount Doom, and when they... Anyway, I don't need to get into that. My mind is starting to go over that way and start thinking about all those names. But because I read lots of books, every time I read a book, I knew that I was reading what was represented in front of me was a consciousness. Somebody had written that. Somebody had been thinking that. And somehow I felt that they were still there, even though Tolkien at the time was probably already dead. I think he might have died. I don't know when he died. If he died in the 50s, then he was already dead because I didn't read it until 1969. But anyway, when you walk into a library, you can just feel the tomes whispering. You're not alone. We are not alone. We are not alone. And I could always sense this because my larger frame sensed all these beings all around me. They didn't have to be just in my immediate surroundings. That told me whether somebody was immediately around me, and usually I didn't like that because then they interfered with my ability to, either listen to that Winnie the Pooh tape that my dad had made when I was 6 years old. He read Winnie the Pooh to all of us. And an amazing rendition, as a matter of fact. And then he traveled a lot, but I didn't really notice because whenever I could, I spent a lot of time just listening to that tape. And if he wasn't there, and I say tape, it was a reel-to-reel tape. And so I had to manipulate that. But because it was a reel-to-reel, that tape went for hours and hours. As a matter of fact, you just went one direction and then the other direction and then one more time. I don't know, there might have been 4 tracks and you got both books, Winnie the Pooh and House on Pooh Corner. Hours and hours and hours and I listened to that over and over and over again. And because of that, my father was always with me. He was always with me, right there in my own mind, with my own thoughts, walking with me always. And it didn't matter where his body was. I knew where he was. He was right there with me. And it's kind of a funny thing I think I've done all my life. And because of that, I never feel alone. I'm always trying to be alone. Get away from me so I can think straight. People are confusing. And so I found it amusing when I heard Abraham say, you confuse each other, and how interesting it is when somebody goes off by themselves and, meditates for a long time and then they go, oh, that's what it is, We confuse each other. We take polls, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? What do you think about this? Instead of spending a long time with yourself, asking yourself, what do I think about this? And it's what you do is you put it through your own mechanism and the interesting part is how it resonates or does not resonate with the inner being within you. That's actually the one, whose opinion you really need to be asking. What does my inner being think about this? And if it makes you feel scared or it makes you feel angry, or actually it all depends on where you are on the emotional scale as to whether angry is a good idea. Ultimately, angry is not a good idea, but if you're in depression, angry is a very good idea because that is a movement towards source. That is a feeling of relief. That makes you feel lighter, makes you feel better. Get to anger. People don't like you there, so get through it. Get past it. Know that that's not the ultimate destination. It's just a, this feels better. This feels better. Okay, so just try not to do any harm when you're in that state. When you're in that state of revenge or whatever, don't go out and slash his tires. Don't take a Louisville Slugger to both of his headlights. And for God's sake, don't carve your initials, carve your name into his leather seats. I laugh every time I hear that song. Boy, does he have all... I don't care if he cheated on her. He has got her dead to rights. So one of my personal rules of thumb is always, when you are in any state of negative emotion, sit on your hands, get past it, get through it, get on to something better. Let me show the emotional guidance scale, just in case anyone out there listening is interested in looking at it. Here's the emotional guidance scale. This takes you, the bottom one is very, very heavy, negative emotion. And moving upwards, you could argue those last two. Is jealousy harsher than hatred? I don't know. I'm not sure. She has decided that jealousy is a heavier, the way she's looking at that. This is Abraham Hicks's. Now somebody on the internet has put this one out. I screenshot it just because I liked it. I also have another one here that shows it. You can see this one shows actually. This illustrates the two vortices a little bit better, because you are two vortices. One is you as your source self, and the other one is you as your physical self, your physical mind, your physical self. And when your mind is in alignment with your source mind, you are in a state of positive momentum. And so you're somewhere from satisfaction on up to joy. Somewhere in there. That's the momentum you're going, because the two of you are agreeing, and so you're like in phase with one another. And actually, you could draw these differently. So, I actually ordered this one. I never did frame it though. I need to frame it and put it on my wall here in my office because I like this one. When you start taking thoughts that are that are out of phase with the frequencies that your inner being is surfing on at all times, that's when you start building this momentum of negative emotion. And the more you dig in and double down on those thoughts, the more you hold on to the thoughts instead of caring how you feel. You need to care how you feel. And you be like, I do care how I feel. And if those people would just change the condition, oh man, would I be so happy to feel better. No, you don't care how you feel. You care more about the condition than you care how you feel. Because if you cared how you felt, you would let go of that thought that is making that vibration within you happen. It's your thought that's doing it. It's some thought that your smaller self is taking is putting you into a state of resistance. Now, the being that you really are is the object of your exercise is to try to find a place where your beliefs and your desires coincide. So something that you want is something that you believe that you can have. Now, a lot of people, they get stuck with this one. Their beliefs get stuck, and their desires and they just kind of stall out and go, well, the thing I really want, I don't believe I can have, so, oh well, I will just sit here and not get what I want. The more you do that, Your inner being doesn't do that. Your inner being continues to grow, continues to evolve, continues to notice things around you that are interesting, that are possible, that are whatever. And when you and your inner being get too far apart, that's when you start to degrade, and when you start to get old, and when you start to lose your energy stream and your purpose and your meaningful connection to the field around you, and ultimately you grow still. However, you grow still and die, right? But your energy and your continuum of data flow and the information of who we all are and what we all thought about and cared about and were working on, all the projects, all the possibilities, all the expansion, all the interesting, all of the growth possibilities, all of that continues, along with all of the information of everywhere where we have come from. It's like it's printed in a couple of places. There is one really interesting place now. Nassim Haramein calls this the space time, that network of energy and information. He also calls it the space memory network, because it has a really interesting characteristic, and this is going to pair with the concept of the Akashic records. Now, the Akashic records, I don't know, if you go and look up what the definition of that, I think it's a Buddhist term, and it refers to, it's kind of a human thing. It has to do with human consciousness and I don't know exactly. But the Space Memory Network, let me explain to you what the Space Memory Network is. And this is why, for one thing, this is one reason why all of the information of the past is with us now in the present and will always be with us. That you cannot get away from the past. That's why your inner being never has to look back there, because the information of the past is right here, right now, with us at all times. And where is it? Well, it's stamped on the fabric of space-time, basically, as whatever is happening whizzes by. So, like, everything's moving, and we are on this planet, and this planet is spinning. I even have the numbers. I have the numbers close by. I wonder if I have them close by enough to actually see how many miles an hour. It comes from that song from is it The Meaning of Life? Yeah, The Meaning of Life. Just remember that you're standing on a planet that's revolving, revolving at 900 miles an hour. Anyway, it gives all the numbers. We're spinning around, we're flying around the sun is flying around the galaxy, and so where things are happening here on Earth, as we whiz by, that's point in space. It's like the hard drive of the universe. It all has to do with us being a black hole. The universe is a black hole, and all the information is smeared on the outside. And blah, 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 blah. Anyway, Space Memory Network. And I'm going to tie this into something else. Have you ever heard of Rupert Sheldrake? Rupert Sheldrake is sort of a spiritual scientist. He's a scientist, but he is very spiritually wise and spiritually in tune. And he has been studying all of his life morphogenetic fields and what he believes their physicality is. I mean, it's vibrational, but it's real. And it's things like, there is a thing that happens when our eyes look at the world. When we look at things, there is a an energy thing that is coming from our eyes that is touching whatever it is that we're looking at. Our mind is it's a real thing. It's a field of information. And you can study this by studying things like, am I prepared to do this really quickly? Have you ever heard of Rupert Sheldrake? Like when you are looking at the sky and you are looking at the stars in a very real and meaningful way, your mind is touching those stars. We are all connected, and connected in marvelous and fascinating and exciting and interesting ways. And yes, are the implications that really, really dire and potentially, whatever to our physical. It's just like when somebody realized the energy contained within a single atom. And then they went, holy God, if you split one of those things, the boom would be monumental. And son of a gun, they were right. They were right about that. But it's more than that. The potential is so huge to the physicality when you realize how it's made and how it flows and how real and not real it is. I mean, none of it's real and all of it's real, and it's what that actually even means, because that kind of sounds like psychobabble. I just said a whole lot of nothing when I said that. But it's like a 3D printer, and you at the center of your whatever, you are the formless part of it. So you need to be the formless part of it. You need to be the part that is choosing the chooser, the preferer, the observer, I'm going to look at this situation and I'm going to go, you know what? I recognize now we are all in this together. And I actually cannot make a beautiful, joyful, peaceful, fun, creative, bountiful, joyful world all by myself. I need cooperative components. And when you think of the situation as, when you do your calculation and do your formula, you work your formula from a win-win position, from an assumption of all of us are right, every one of us is right, from some vantage point. Now, you might be right, but you've gotten yourself turned backwards. And so you're right in a way, but you're out of alignment, and so you're chaotic. And now you are causing trouble in the part of the field where you are, and you're making trouble for order around you. And so the answer is not punishment. The answer is not retribution and revenge because now because no, it is we've got to love and soothe one another back to our communal alignment and let each and every one of us call their divine path. We've got to figure out a way, a structural way, an organizational way to have a wholeness that is flowing efficiently and collectively on the one hand, but it's set up so that every individual gets to call which part of it they want to play. It's really opened up quite a lot in the last number of decades. What is possible, what the choices that one might have in order to make a living. And actually, we need to go to universal basic income here pretty soon, because humanity is totally capable of producing all the food that we need and to keep all of our body and soul together. So you get everybody set to a minimal standard of living. And then if you want better than that, And the minimal standard of living can be fairly bare. If all of you who think we need to be, you know, prodded and shamed and, feared into, some kind of productivity. But honestly, humanity does not need all of our productivity in the same way it used to need our productivity, especially with automation. Do not fear automation. The only reason we should fear automation is if we are depending on those horrible, grubby jobs that nobody wants to do for our ticket to the grocery store. But if we can automate it away, let's automate it away. We'll get there. We will get there. We're going to get to a place, or we will evolve to that realization of who we really are, or things aren't going to be very well for us. So I actually think it's going to be fine. When I start to torture myself by spinning out, in the future, the most horrible scenarios that I can think of, what I'm doing is I'm projecting myself into a future where my inner being did not go with me. Because my inner being would never think that way. And so when I went and thought that way, she didn't go with me. She's still thinking about all the possibilities. She's still thinking about, what's fun and what's loving and what's kind and what's connected and what's joyful and what's organized and what's better. What's more beautiful and more efficient and more efficient data flowing more beautifully and more creative, co-creative endeavors. That's what she's thinking about. And every time you get a whiff of that, you've gone in phase with her, and boy, you feel good. That's why it matters how you feel. It matters how you feel. So keep your good humor. Focus on, so what I have done over the last several years as my own Who Am I project has unfolded, the very act of going into my studio and talking about this ad nauseum, for an hour or for a while I was doing this for 2 hours a day. Part 1 and part 2, and then just posting it in my own files. I didn't even post it outwards to the world. They weren't on YouTube or anywhere. They're just in my own Who Am I file. I have a whole... I don't have a whole year. Yes, I do. I have a long time. Back a year ago, November, I started calling it Who Am I? Earlier this year, in January, was the first time that I started posting it to YouTube. But my own Who Am I project has been basically an oral meditation that's jacking me to my positives, what it's doing. But it gets me to identify for an hour a day, vocally, with my quiet side. I get into this state where I'm not pushing back against anything. From the vantage point of the Who Am I show, we are all in this together, and there is no us and them. And I identify myself as the wholeness of the universe as well. So I identify with my source self as well as identifying with my individual self. And I say, these two selves are me. Now, I find that different than the teachings that I was taught. I was always taught that this self isn't me. This source self, that's separate from me. That's God or the Holy Spirit, or that's something outside and different from me. And in a way it is, because it is anchored in the wholeness of the whole thing. Now, because you are part of the whole thing, you have an umbilicus to this source. And it's a spin. It's a spin that's spinning. The whole field is spinning co-creatively as one entity. Now, I coming into my realization of who I am and what's going on, I go, okay, I'm spinning with this vortex of wholeness that has me cradled in its loving arms. And we are all dancing with this together. And it's all okay, it's all okay. But I also have in my possession my own point of spin. Now, when I go in phase with my greater self, then I get all kinds of energy and ideas, and I'm going and flowing with, all and it's fun, and you can feel that. And when I don't, well, you can feel that too. You go into negative emotion, or you go into stubborn refusal to expand, and then you just get old and go out of coherence and you die. And that's what's going on. That's who we all are. But the fact is the frequencies that you are do not die. And the continuum that you have been, the continuum of experience, continues to be known. And how it played with the rest of the group, and what it looked like from all the other positions as you walked through that and played that, it stays in the record forever and ever and ever. And actually, I heard the most amazing news, and because of what I've been thinking about for the last couple of years, I have a tendency to believe this because I believe it's possible that we as humanity are going to be given our historical record, everything that's happened on our planet for the last, however many thousands of years, because it is known and it is recorded. Who's going to give it to us? The extraterrestrials that are going to be making full contact here fairly soon. Now, you might ask me why I believe such a wild and crazy thing. I don't really know what the general state of all of humanity, whether they're on board with that or not. They've had hearings. I don't know whether the rest of the world generally recognizes or agrees with or believes in extraterrestrials. If you go back and watch, like in the 90s, there's an episode on Frasier where Niles and Frasier are for a particular political candidate. But then they realize how wackadoo he is because he believes that he had been abducted by aliens. Well, I don't know how that is seen anymore. But from what I understand, I have heard there is a belief out there, and I tentatively think that it might be possible that we might be getting ready for full extraterrestrial contact. And I can understand why it wouldn't have happened before. Our consciousness needs to rise, or the first thing we'd do is try to shoot them down with our anti-aircraft guns, or dissect them on the laboratory tables, or, some of that kind of stuff. That's exactly what we would do. Now, the other thing is free, clean energy, gravity control, and full contact with extraterrestrials. We can only be trusted with this kind of activity and this kind of information if we have raised our level of consciousness so that we realize that to screw your neighbor is to screw yourself, because you are the field and your neighbor is not separate from you. Your neighbor is your unknown self made visible. That's from Khalil Gibran, actually. I'm not sure what. At one point, I thought it was in The Prophet, but it is not in The Prophet. Now, sometimes he is considered to be the prophet. Khalil Gibran. He was one of those wonderful spiritual people who crossed all the religious boundaries. Considered himself all the religions. that addition consciousness is a mark of higher level consciousness. The adding it all in instead of, either oring it. It's I was trying to explain this to my husband the other day, and I don't know how well I got it through, but there's two different kinds of people. One, they can just pull it all in, and it's safe and it's okay because they are oh yeah, that, oh yeah, okay, I see how the and they are this and people. um, there's and people and there's or people. The or people, they have a different way of doing it. They don't just they aren't open-minded. They can't be open-minded. They have a guardian at the gate of their consciousness, and their physical mind at the front of they examine the thought at the gate, and if they think that it fits with what they already have going on in their physical structure, then they let it in. Otherwise, they fend it off. Nope, not going to let that one in. And so they aren't particularly open-minded. And those kind of people, when they get older, they can get quite crusty with their inability to let in any new thoughts. They tend to be, those are cynics. The others, the first ones, they start out gullible, but I think they turn it into wise people. Because what they do is, well, this is what I did anyway, and I don't mean to presume that I'm wise, but I try to find my wisdom. If you don't know what to do with a thought, don't discard it. If you don't know how it fits in the picture, you just put it into that place where everything goes. That's like a room of requirement. If you're a Harry Potter fan, it's almost like that. I don't know what to do with that. I'm going to put it in this place where everything goes. And at some point, different thoughts might go in there and start organizing some of that stuff. That's what happened to me about 5 years ago when Abraham gave to me the notion of the vortex, the notion of law of attraction, and the concrete idea of the inner being. And the inner being as a spinning vortex of creation, attracting things to its desires, to its purposes. Now, source energy, that vortex of creation contains all of us. Every one of us is in there as a cooperative component to the full vortex of creation that our inner being is standing in and has going on. And the only question is, how much of that are you lining up with? Are you getting into alignment with? Are you... I see now I am over an hour. And so I'm going to go check my chat room, see if I held my audience, if anybody else joined my audience, if they chatted with one another or with me. Because I'm going to get ready and close this show. I didn't really mean to leave it on this slide for so long. I should go back to my original slide here. I hope that this is suggested to me as a thumbnail for my video, for my live stream. So hold on one second. I'm going to pause my recording. I'm just going to come over and look at my chat room. 2 views. Average view duration. Is that because... Indigo, are you still here? Are you still here, Indigo? Because I'm not sure. Yay! Excellent. All right. So I'm getting ready to close off for today. Tomorrow is New Year's Day. So actually, I'm going to go back over to the other side. Yeah. Oh, I'm smiling at you too, honey. I'm going to go back over to the other side and say goodbye from the main place. I really appreciate you coming and seeing me again. I don't know whether I'll do this tomorrow. It is New Year's Day. I usually sleep through the fireworks. I'm in bed by 10 on New Year's Day, which is better than usual. I'm usually in bed by 8:30. All right, let me go back to my studio. I'm going to unpause this, and I'm going to just leave us with this. There is a lot of negative out there that you could focus on, and you wouldn't be wrong, you know? And the people who are focused on the negative, they're not wrong. However, what we focus on and how we focus on it is everything, because it is the very meaning of what direction we are going. If it feels good and no, that's not the right thing to say. Focus on the positive. There is a lot to focus on. There is a great deal of hope. Our raised consciousness is all we need to fix every problem that we have on planet Earth. So get the word out. We are a field phenomenon. Intelligence is all around us. It is not contained solely within the mind of a human being. And it's our ability to tune into this greater field of awareness is going to determine how wise and how intelligent we really are. And with that, I'm going to leave you until maybe tomorrow, the beginning of a brand new year. This is the last day of 2024. And I hope that next year indeed is a blessed year. And so until tomorrow, until next year rather, as always, may that source be with you.